Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving headfirst into the terrifying intersection of urban exploration, decaying infrastructure, and the unexplained. We're going to take a structured look at three chilling first-hand accounts that walk that razor-thin line between psychological dread and absolute horror.
You've got to ask yourself, right? What exactly compels us to ignore the warning signs, kick down boarded-up doors, and step straight into the decaying, unpredictable unknown? Is it just the thrill of trespassing, the fascination with forgotten history, or is it something darker?
We've got three wild first-hand accounts to unpack today, where pure curiosity led to pure dread. And we're going to ground our analysis not just in visual terror, but in the visceral sensory details of these explorers. We're talking stuff like walking into an empty room and getting hit with an overwhelming, gag-inducing scent that literally smells like death.
All right, Section 1, the allure of abandoned spaces.
So before we even touch the spooky stuff, let's talk reality and unpack the underlying psychology of why these rotting structures attract us. You guys already know the very real, physical hazards of urbex. Explorers are navigating collapsing floors, breathing in biohazards, and risking severe trespassing charges. Add in the absolute lack of cell service and the risk of stumbling upon unpredictable individuals seeking shelter, and honestly, the environment is already perfectly primed for panic.
Moving on to Section 2, our first case study, the military village.
Picture this, a massive, rotting military base. Explorers said it looked straight out of the Upside Down from Stranger Things, like a complete neighborhood, but just wrong. This facility housed over 200 military families during World War II and the Cold War, but was abruptly abandoned in 1984. It sat there decaying in total isolation for 30 years before finally getting torn down in 2014. And during those 3 decades, it bred some crazy local lore. We're talking rumors of demonic cults and top-secret underground experiments. Naturally, it was an absolute magnet for local teenagers. So, a group of high school seniors finally make the drive out there. They manually hoist up the old security gates, completely cutting themselves off from the outside world. They step inside one of the intact, decaying houses, and right away they hear it, the distinct sound of heavy footsteps creaking on old wood. One of the explorers points out the window, and no joke, they spot 3 distinct head shadows moving super stealthily along the outside of the neighboring house, slipping quietly into the backyard. Cue the sheer absolute panic. They bolt back to their vehicle in the pitch dark, but what they find is so much worse. Standing right next to their car is a tall woman wearing this gross, old black dress. But here's the truly terrifying part. She had the car door open and literally had one leg already inside their back seat. One of the explorers just screamed, which startled her. She let go of the door and bolted into an abandoned church on the property. Okay, Section 3. Case study number 2, the floorless house. Let's pivot from a sprawling military base to a super isolated, structurally compromised home. Here we encounter a classic explorer habit called the routine. Digging through debris to find cool artifacts from the former residence. So while our narrator was glued to his spot in the living room, terrified of falling through a literal giant hole in the floorboards into the basement, his girlfriend was just doing her routine, totally ignoring the structural danger around her. She urges him to explore the upstairs. He crawls through this gross space full of rotting baby food and rat droppings, and then he hears a rhythmic creaking down the hall. He follows the sound and stumbles onto something impossible for a boarded-up house. Sitting right there in the gloom is an old woman with deeply wrinkled skin and a long skirt, just slowly rocking back and forth in a chair, staring out the window. Now look at how methodically this escalates. The explorer takes a step, the floor creaks, and boom, she stops rocking instantly. He foolishly asks if she's okay. Instead of answering, she slowly stands up and starts this low, melodic humming. Then she abruptly whips around to face him, which obviously triggers his flight response. But get this, when he grabs his skeptical girlfriend and comes back seconds later, the room is completely empty. Yet, as they retreat to the stairs, they both hear the creaking begin again, followed by the humming. Nope, no thank you.
Which brings us to Section 4, our final case study, the late neighbor.
This final case hits way closer to home. It completely bypasses remote locations and focuses on the tragic death of an angry elderly neighbor, leaving a property totally frozen in time right next door. For 6 solid months, a group of teenagers were relentlessly yelled at by this guy just for playing football near his yard. He'd violently bang on his windows, but then, sudden silence. The teens joked that he must have died.
Well, a month later, massive guilt washed over them because they woke up in the dark and actually saw a zipped-up body bag being carried out of his home. Fast forward a few years. The house has just been sitting there, entirely abandoned. Pressured by a dare, the narrator slips through an unlocked window. Inside, he finds the house perfectly, chillingly preserved. A book still holding its bookmark, a sweater draped on a kitchen chair, a dusty coffee mug on the table, and hanging over all of it, a smell so profoundly sickening, the literal smell of death, that he had to wrap his shirt over his face just to keep from gagging. While he's creeping around inside, he hears a massive violent bang against the house wall and absolutely bolts. But the true horror happens later that night. Looking out their own bedroom window straight into the dead man's empty house, the teens watch a human silhouette appear in the doorway, move right in front of the window, and slowly pace back and forth in the darkness before fading away completely.
All right, Section 5, Paranormal or Pure Psychology.
This brings us to the core analytical question of our explainer. We've got the data, we've got the accounts, but how do we objectively categorize these horrifying encounters? Are we talking about the supernatural or the desperate realities of the living? Let's break it down. In the military base, was the woman in the black dress a demonic specter from decades of local legend? Or, let's be real, was she simply a transient individual, a dangerous squatter seeking shelter who opportunistically tried to hijack an unlocked car while teens poked around her territory? Then there's the floorless house, where the logic gets incredibly strained. We genuinely have to weigh the existence of a vanishing, humming phantom against the physical reality. Is it truly possible that an elderly, wrinkled woman was surviving alone in a structurally unsound, boarded-up hazard with giant holes in the floor? Or did the explorer's mind just invent a phantom to justify his deep-seated anxiety about the building collapsing? And finally, with the late neighbor, was that pacing silhouette the restless, angry spirit of a man who died alone by his kitchen table? Or was it just his estranged son returning in the dead of night to survey the property? The narrator desperately clung to the son theory to calm his friends down, even though the source explicitly notes the son didn't officially arrive with the dumpster to gut the house until a full year later.
Look, when you break down the elements of these encounters, the physical dangers, the rotting floors, the biohazards, and the legal risks are undeniably high. But it's the psychological fear, that raw panic generated by the unknown, the darkness, and maybe a heavy dose of adolescent guilt that remains the absolute most potent factor in every single story. Ultimately, whether these first-hand accounts featured literal ghosts, opportunistic living trespassers, or were simply hallucinations amplified by deep anxiety, the mechanics of the horror remain exactly the same. The true terror always stems from the human mind desperately trying to fill in the dark blanks of a decaying room, just trying to make sense of the things society has left behind. I hope this structured breakdown has illuminated the crazy psychology behind urban exploration horror for you today. So I'm going to leave you with this final, chilling thought to consider. If you ever find yourself staring into the window of an abandoned house, and you clearly see a silhouette move in the darkness, do you fear the supernatural, or do you fear the living?